to allow that. It's like,
Sorry, 1 second.
so as we wait for this to get pulled up, Mr. Chairman, so we had the open space area. We kind of looked at it in two different ways. One was what is the landscape and the vegetation in the area around it, particularly the areas that are natural, outside any disturbance. What was there historically, and also kind of what kind of habitat could be created or enhanced or somehow found to be useful for particularly just providing a unique habitat and opportunity that normally doesn't come about from a project. So the goal here was to look at kind of creating a area that is a protected meadow space, in the sense of we're creating a screened area along the edge of the easement. This hatch is drainage and sewer easement, so we can't plant in there because that area should be protected and used for potential utilization of any type of maintenance that would be necessary on the utility lines, the drain line, and also the sewer line. So not being able to go into that area of the easement, we concluded that kind of the best way to kind of tie in, particularly with the open space, was to kind of come here and create basically a U-shaped natural hedge to create an open meadow area in the middle. And this was mainly looking at the old aerial photographs of the area pre-construction of this Basin A, which is just to the south here of this area. And I have, this is the Google Earth from 2016. That was earlier than this, but you can see this is the open space right now. It has a very much a shrub, early successional, but fairly well along early successional forest with a lot of meadow habitat. When I walk the site in the back, checking out, making sure that there's nothing going downstream, there's a lot of open areas with beautiful grass, shrub thickets, and then you've got these clumps of evergreens and upland trees that really provide a unique habitat, because you've got a lot of open meadow that's well protected and screened from anything nearby, which creates a lot of open space for wildlife to thrive and be active. And so our concept here was to kind of recreate and restore that feature that was actually there historically, and also kind of allow that to function. And most of this area was part of the original limits of work for the subdivision, but as we understand that there's been some loss of open space elsewhere, restoring it here definitely provides some value to the open space as a whole, but also creates unique habitat. So that was our intention for the open space concept. We just updated this plan with some additional plantings. We went to 15 trees and 40 shrubs. We also updated the species, particularly staghorn sumac, red oak, and pin oaks. Those are better for salt. And then the shrubs, we also swapped out some. Witch hazel still there, but we did put in inkberry, bayberry, and creeping juniper, again, just to provide some better salt tolerant shrubs in that area. But you'll notice that the planting palette in the open space is more of your straight upland species in the upland area. So your alternate leaf dogwood, your witch hazel. There is sweetberry bush in the buffer zone here. There's a lot of sweet fern, maple leaf viburnum, meadow sweet. And then your trees, you've got a nice selection to choose from. Since we got red oaks and white oaks, which have done well elsewhere on this property. Sumac is in this area already, along with trying to add some additional hardwoods like cottonwood, aspen, and sugar maple. So those are the plans we updated. And then if you want, I can just quickly go through. This is the plan here. Not too much happened to the plan view, but we did add this cross section right here, which gives the commission a good idea of where we have doing the trees and the shrubs along the edge, where we have to have a limit of work so we could bring in the soil, the embedment here, noting the infilling and the chinking of the rocks to fill in the voids. We're gonna have a 3-foot wide riprap anchor, riprap with fabric to kind of create that border edge of the water there. We have a pitched slope from there to the road here. You've got a guardrail here, and this is your roadway cross section. And then we have down here construction sequencing, going through installing erosion controls, how we're going to get that, basically lowering the mini excavator down there or accessing around lot 81, clearing the work area wherever needed, doing the infill, checking the voids, backfilling, making sure things are sloped, installing erosion mats, cleaning up things to make sure the top is pitched right on top of the slope, loaming and seeding cinches, 6 inches of soil everywhere to make sure we have good topsoil. Slopes are going to have erosion mats to support stabilization, remove the excavator from the area, and then everything's to be restored per the buffer zone restoration plan. So that's all there, which is good to have it all on the plan, so it's clear that there's the restorations happening after that work is all completed. So with that, I'm glad to take questions.
Sure. Let's stay on this plan, Mark. Mike, you were especially concerned about the treatment from the top of the slope. Now, these plans have been submitted to everyone. Have you had an opportunity to take a look at that? Mike? He's muted.
Sorry, it took me a second to get unmuted. My freezing up today. I did glance at it, and I had noted in our minutes from this meeting where we last discussed it that the guardrail and/or plantings, a sort of fence was already in the plans, but the grass, it was just going to be grass at the top, and the minutes refer to the applicant looking into either a tall type of salt resistant vegetation or a fence of some sort. I don't know if it would be a couple foot high chain link with some lattice or something, and to stop some of the salt from spraying over the top and down into the wetlands and disturbing or destroying the wetlands, because it doesn't do much good to plant all those nice trees and shrubs down there only to have salt land on them on a regular basis, in my opinion, and I don't see that reflected on this plan.
So just to be clear, the plantings that we changed out at the bottom of the slope are specifically chosen to be more salt tolerant, and that was to respond to kind of your concerns about the vegetation. So we swapped out those species specifically to be more salt tolerant at the toe there. This is near the end of a dead end road, so the trucks are not at high speed here plowing down to the
cul-de-sac. That actually makes it much worse for salting, because anywhere you see a salt truck slow and turn, it's generally a firm rule of operation that the salt keeps spraying out, and because they slow down, it keeps spraying out at pretty much the same speed. You see large amounts of salt. The biggest piles of salt in Bellingham are right outside the DPW parking lot onto Blackstone Street. Blackstone Street. But anyway, I'm also concerned a little bit about the top of the slope where we have that nice. It doesn't say grass shoulder or strip. It doesn't say how wide that is. I see it, but how wide is that up to the guardrail there?
So that area is, I think, plus or minus 10 feet at most. It's not a very large area. So this is 25 feet right here. So I mean, the guardrail is right here. So you're probably talking no more than probably 8 feet at most there, because it's a pretty narrow strip from that guardrail back.
Maybe if it's 6 to 8 feet, Mark, that ties right into, by grading and tapering of soil, to the rocks that are at the top of the slope, forming the top lip of the armored slope. Is that correct?
All water is going to, the water from the riprap to the edge of the road all pitches to the road. So there's a slope.
Right, but the area that you have for the riprap apron fabric filter, there's soil underneath the apron fabric filter. What's on top of it? Just 3-inch wide stone?
Yeah, it's basically just it's a rip wrapped area basically. So you imagine if you rip wrap a slope, you usually or rip wrap apron for a stormwater basin outlet. You have fabric and you have a layer of stone of rip wrap, basically 3-inch minus.
So my concern in part, maybe I didn't express it at the sidewalk as well, was that I envision that that area will be dead grass all the time, because unless you plant something that's really salt resistant, you'll kill it. Therefore, it is going to be more prone, since it's such a narrow area, to erosion. And being at the top of the slope, even with the riprap apron fabric filter, which I hadn't seen that detail until this plan was provided, or I hadn't noticed it. I still have some concerns that if the top is dead, grass doesn't grow, the salt's killing it, some spraying over, maybe some of the planting down below is resistant to it, maybe some isn't, but the top of the slope is degraded from a stabilization point. I have some concerns being at the top of the slope, whether it's tapered back to the road or not. I understand that some stuff would flow back, but you were never envisioning that would be ungrassed, a bare slope, correct? A dead grass,
This area was always intended to be a grass strip along the road. That was per the approved plans for the subdivision. So the slope, the top of this area may have been a little bit narrower, but not by much. So really, if you think about it that way, I mean, the guardrail is where it was basically originally proposed. So the grass strip is as it was proposed originally. So there's really no changes, modifications from the guardrail to the road itself from what was originally approved. We do have a native seed mix. I mean, there's New England Wetland Plants makes erosion control mixes specifically for the sides of roads. And grass areas along state highways can do very well with grass. And those are heavily salted. So I don't see that as a major concern. I think, again, if there's a specific seed mix the commission wants us to use, we could definitely do that. Again, I mean, there's New England Wetland Plants has a lot of different seed mixes specifically for erosion control and areas along roadsides, particularly that are upland mixes, and those are designed specifically for areas that would see a lot of salt. So if the commission wants a specific seed mix used here versus what would probably put there under the approved plans would just put in a regular grass seed mix, you would at least get a lot of other native grasses in there that would create better stabilization. But I think overall, we're not changing the plan significantly in that area. And I think, again, with the 6 inches of topsoil and it's seeded in the erosion mats in place, that'll allow the grass to get in really well and to allow it to flourish even under the winter conditions.
Perhaps Mike can do a little research on that and see if he can find something, a salt tolerance standard grass that might be recommended. But looking at the mechanics of it, the filter fabric and the stone riprap will help prevent infiltration at the top of the slope and then potential loosening of the stone in the armored slope. I think that's one of the things that Mike and the commission was looking at out in the field. And you've added a subdrain to help intercept any kind of water there that might break out during high volume storm events. We hadn't talked about that, and I think it's a good idea.
Mr. Chair, I don't understand from this picture how that drain actually would be pulling the water from the surface and from flowing in potentially over and down the slope. If it looks like it's paved right up to the edge of it, and the curb goes up and then onto the grass. Is it permeable up through into the area straight above it, or I just can't tell from this picture?
So there's grass from my cursor here over, so that any water that would be in here that perks down would go there. This void space would naturally draw water this way.
I'm not seeing a cursor. Mark, I'm not seeing a cursor. I don't know if anybody else is.
I'm seeing it.
but I don't see
We're
anything.
seeing it.
Now I see one.
What? Can you
Okay, good.
see this?
Okay,
Can you
sorry, I
see
didn't
the arrow?
Yeah, I got it now.
Can you see the arrow?
Yes, I do now.
All right,
Thanks.
so this area here is all grass.
Right.
So the groundwater would draw down, and there'd be natural drawdown this direction, and there would be some this direction. The purpose of this is mainly just the road drainage as a whole, in the sense of making sure that the groundwater around here is drawn, isn't allowed to accumulate high up here to impact the roadway structure. This is mainly because of the roadway itself, and pretty much a standard detail. I think that's what, from my understanding from the engineer, that was actually, this was going to be here already. So that's
The squared areas, Mark, just to the left of your cursor, what the back end of your cursor is on, back up right there. What is that material there?
I believe it's compacted gravel subgrade. So
Okay.
it's specifically an area that's just to call out the fact that it's going to be an area, yeah, right here, a 12-inch gravel base.
Okay, I couldn't see it. Okay, thanks. So then we have pavement on top of that. I still don't see how the water on the road is going to get into that drain. I think it's a good idea, but I just don't see how does it tie in? You've got a paved surface above. It's impossible.
It's not capturing roadway runoff. It's capturing water that's underground, under the roadway itself, to ensure that there's no, you don't want the groundwater perching underneath your asphalt to crack it. So the idea is that this is just to draw it down enough to keep the groundwater away from the surface to impact the cracking of the road itself. All the water that's on the asphalt goes to a catch basin. This curb is all solid. So water from the roadway does not go here.
Okay.
It's the water underground, under the roadway itself, that would be captured by this.
All right, thanks. That's clearer.
And New England Wetland mix, I mean, they do make a coastal salt tolerant grass mix. That's Canadian wildflower, red fescue, Atlantic coastal panic grass, blue stem, Indian grass, switchgrass, path grass. Most of those grasses are actually in their upland seed mixes as well. But they market that specifically as a coastal salt tolerant mix that tolerates salty conditions and dry areas that receives salt spray and mist. So if we wanted to do that, I'd be fine with that, because most of those species are in their upland seed mix too. One or two may be more of a coastal species, but I don't think that's a problem since they're all native to New England.
Yeah, I'll leave that up to the chair. I'm fine. I was going to suggest something that grows along the coast, might be, salt marshes or whatever might be nice, but whatever would take there and do it. We have a 3-year monitoring period, Mr. Chair, is that correct?
Well, we have a 3-year monitoring period for the plantings. We don't typically have a monitoring period for grass at the side of roadways. But I suppose, we could, because it's all part of this project, if you felt it was necessary, we could incorporate a monitoring period into the operation and maintenance plan and the moving forward.
Well, in this very narrow particular case, I agree mostly. We don't deal with the sides of the roads much, but since this, as the applicant just said, is envisioned to be grassed, and that would be I think, fairly important component to maintaining the integrity of the armored slope down to the wetlands. In addition to
wouldn't be a problem.
in addition to monitoring the stuff below, if the grass doesn't take, we'll know in the first year or two, depending on how much salting they do on the road and how much winter we have. But I think that if it looks like it's taken, great. If it doesn't, then maybe we have to revisit that part of it and just do something different.
We'll be there monitoring the vegetation down the slope. So there's no problem for us to be taking photos of that grassy area as well. It's not an issue.
Thanks. Okay, that makes sense. All right, so can we go back one plan? I believe the plan previous to this showed the, oh, no, that's not the one. But we can take a look at this. Yep, that's the one I was thinking of. Okay. Well, first of all, I think one of our members, Brian, he went for a follow-up inspection and found a lot of material parked and stored right at the top of the slope. Equipment, and probably not advisable. I think, Mark, you were going to check into that. Has that been moved?
It's all gone. It was in our last report, our SWIP report,
Okay.
and which I think
And
that was 2 weeks ago.
That's-
I think
That's right.
that I first documented it was gone. Like the next day, they moved most of it out. because I was there the day after the last hearing. And then the next week, everything was gone.
Yeah, you're correct in informing me of that right now, but, okay. And so while we're at this plan, I think during that site inspection, we noticed that the abutting lot, I think it's lot 82, there's an area right on the border of the open space, right, right there, that wasn't built according to plan. And it looks like you're doing some planting across the lot line. That area right there, should that get some kind of treatment?
I have been talking to the applicant about just making sure that they get the areas on lot 82 stabilized, particularly how tricky it is with the wall, the block wall, the boulder walls that they're using.
Yeah,
So they do have plans in the works for that. So they are working on it, and I'm watching it very carefully because I want to make sure that we don't have any issues. So we may do something. We're gonna have to do touch-up work along that. I mean, the intention was not to plant these off the open space, and they're right on the edge. But I didn't want to I wanted to show that we're going right up to the edge there. And then basically everything from the property out was going to be, at least in this area, was going to be inside, inside the limit of work here. The limit of work here was following the no disturb line, which is this right here. So limit of work came out right here. And so I from my understanding, looking at the plans, they are within their limit of work. The wall is, instead of being more vertical, is stepped versus one straight wall. They decided to step it versus do one vertical wall that's taller. So it's a little more of a safety. I mean, it's a safer wall because it's stepped, and they do have fencing at the top already.
yeah, I think we were a little concerned about the potential for erosion on that one. It looked like there were already some voids. But go ahead.
They pushed the loam too far over some of the stones, and so that's where you're getting the voids, because they pushed the loam too far out. They need to pull the loom back, and then I think the plan is to add just some riprap along the edge just to help with that around the edge. But they are going to address that. I've been discussing it internally before. I think you guys even brought it up. I was like, guys, I want to make sure you have a plan for this, because it's going to it's going to be an issue, and I want you guys to have a plan, so that way when we're ready to go. And that's kind of what we're cranking on the next few weeks, is they're getting there. I've already been talking about getting seeding out there in places that they make sure that your hydro seeders are scheduled, make sure you get your rich mats ready to go. So that's all happening right now.
Do you think the filter fabric and small stone would be advantageous there too?
I think so. I think they were talking about that. They're also thinking about doing like planting junipers there, climbing junipers along that edge, just to kind of provide some quick vegetational coverage.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think I did say that a strip of riprap would be helpful, just to kind of help bridge that gap of where the voids of the big boulders start, and to keep the edge stable, so that way the grass can fully take where it's going to be grass.
Okay. Did anyone on the commission have any questions with the vegetation that Goddard's proposing to plant for the restoration? Okay, I didn't. I thought it looked pretty good. Now, if we could go to the area for the buffer zone restoration, that's the area there. So the concept here is to create an open field area surrounded by shrubs and trees that will grow up to create a fringe environment.
Correct. So it creates a shelter and a border along the easement here. And then it creates a full sheltered edge. So that way it becomes an upland meadow that's fully sheltered. So for example, if there's wildlife that wants to be sheltered from any type of aerial view perspective, if they're looking out for predators from the air, they've got an edge and a meadow to live in, but also there is an open enough area for aerial predators like hawks to come in and feed as well. And that's kind of the nature of the whole open space. In a lot of places, it's actually really beautiful. Back in the woods there's a lot of beautiful open meadow space, and I can see rabbits and hawks having a good old time.
These trees.
So many of the plants that you're proposing as part of this supplemental enhancement are already in existence on the site, on the open space. So we know that the conditions are amenable to those. I think it's a well thought out and I think it's a very good proposal. Does anybody on the commission have any questions on that? Of course, we're gonna wait on the actual Hall Road until such time that the completion of Basin A is affected. We
Correct.
know. Go ahead.
I'm expecting a schedule in the next week or so on the Basin A and Basin B finalization work. And once I have that, I'll let you know in my SWIP updates when that is. And then we'll make sure that we have it kind of in a sequence thing. And then once we have those kind of going along, we can keep an update in the SWIP on where we stand with regards to all those things, and also include this as an action item as part of that sequencing.
Good. I see Frank is on. Peer reviewer. I know you haven't had an opportunity to submit any comments. Is there anything right now that you could suggest the applicant proceed with?
If you could go back, Mark, to the riprap slope, and I'm fully admitting that I am not up to speed on the backstory. I'm a little concerned about the armored slope and how that was constructed. I would presume, but I want to sort of get that the slope has some kind of filter fabric to hold the fines in place, probably some gravel underneath the larger stones. The aerial that I looked at that I blew up about 100 times gets a little bit grainy at the bottom, but it looked like there were a bunch of holes in there as well. I noticed you're putting in infill and sort of chink the openings, but my concern would be that without some kind of fabric to hold the soil behind the rock, that's going to sort of leach out over time, and that might end up having the slope being failure. But I may not be up to speed on how that was really built. And if you have any details of that or information on that, that'd be really handy, I think.
Mark, but I'm not sure. I think the person who was the site manager at the time is no longer with the company. If possible, maybe you can contact Fafford and find out if they have any kind of internal documentation relative to the construction. I mean, we're hoping they just didn't go there and throw a bunch of boulders down.
I think, I mean, from my review, I mean, I was out there when the design structural engineer was out there looking at it. His conclusion was that it looked like it was just compacted fill, and they sloped it and then they armored it with stones, basically. And I never saw any filter fabric there. I don't think anybody thinks there's any fabric underneath the wall at this time. But the structural engineer's conclusion was the issue with the real stability of the wall from a stability standpoint was the fact that the toe wasn't fully embedded in there. There wasn't really any discussion, at least from him, about soil movement, particularly if the voids are all well chinked. And I think we anticipate our structural engineer being on site during this work because we want to make sure that it's done right for the last time. And I don't know, and that's why we also wanted BSC to take a look at this, just because it is a unique structural design. You need more of someone with a geostructural background to look at the stability of the slope in general, particularly with their experience on slopes. I mean, I have some experience from my old company. We would do slope stability analysis for slopes like this, but that's the knowledge that I have. I can ask Fafford if we know anybody who was around, and we might be able to provide a little bit of a narrative what was there, but I don't think it's going to be very much more than what I've expressed here.
If there's any opportunity to maybe have your geotech person come up with a little narrative based on what he thinks is there. And then Frank can take a look at that, and maybe we can, work through, I'd like Frank to take a look at that. Obviously, we're in a situation here where now we're representing the zoning board for portions of the open space that were permitted, and we're representing the DPW because the town's going to end up owning the road, and they want to make sure that, in 15 years, we don't have a situation like we had elsewhere in town where the Versalock wall blew out. So anything we can do now to assure the long-term viability of this is of the utmost importance.
Frank, you did see the letter from UTS of Massachusetts that was submitted in our original NOI packet? That had the narrative, that kind of the general narrative of what was there. I mean, it's not extremely elaborate, but he does give a general idea. He drew a conceptual cross-section of kind of what he saw. He provided a list basically of how thick the boulders are. He mentions that the geometry seems to work, but that the toe isn't there. So that's that was his analysis as a structural engineer. So, and I'm sure you will have some comments as well once their review is done.
I mean, I guess I haven't seen that letter, but I'm sure I can get it from Ann. My concern is you've got a wetland roughly at elevation 282, and that would potentially indicate that the groundwater certainly is going to be well below, probably the bottom of the catch basin across the street. But my concern would be that if there's a groundwater going uphill on this plan from the right to the left, would that be sufficient to start, again, blowing out the bottom of that slope, undermining it? These are just, again, assumptions. I don't have any data on that. And the second part would be, will that clean fill be sufficient to sort of provide the toe in that didn't get put into the wall the first time through? And I don't know if there's any information on groundwater from across the street or something like that or whatever, but just that being concerned. The other being, even if there's only a little bit and you don't have something to hold the soil behind the wall over time, and you've got those nice voids, some of the rocks over time might slip out. And I think that might be, at least I'm sort of reading between some of the comments from the DPW, that is that wall going to be stable over a long period of time, over 10 or 15 years? And that would be the concern. Obviously, you can't go back and reinvent something or install something behind it. But normally you would look at having a filter fabric to hold the soil in and then crush stone around the rock that you put in for this type of an armored slope.
May I express that Frank provide those comments to BSC and his concerns and have BSC kind of make sure they look at those? I mean, there's ways to potentially solve the issue in little ways. You could stuff fabric in the voids and then stop to help fill in those sections, and you just have patches of fabric. First, it wouldn't be continuous, but at least you could help any voids that are larger. That could be a potential thing. But I think I'd like to see what BSC says, and if I would encourage the commission to have Frank list out his concerns to BSC and tell BSC that you want them to particularly look at these issues, because I think I'd like to hear their perspective on it. I'm not a structural engineer, although I have seen enough to kind of do sense. But I think that's the best way to move forward with those questions. Understanding that BSC should look at it very rigorously, and we're anticipating that.
Well, and we can also, you're going to be in there with a small piece of equipment. You're going to lift it over the edge. You're going to be using that to do some work at the bottom, at the toe end, and probably even using it to plant some of the shrubs and trees. I would suggest just digging down and see if you can estimate seasonal high groundwater in that area I think that was one of the things Frank was inquiring about, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we
So,
could, we do have enough room, particularly right in this area here.
There you
where there's
go.
no
Exactly.
vegetation, we could do a hole. And
Yeah.
if that was a concern that BSC wanted to put that as kind of a holder in the sense of that before any work starts, that be dug and that BSC review the conditions to ensure that what's observed there doesn't compromise their review in any way. I think that would be suitable to us as the start of work to kind of say BSC is going to make an assumption at the moment, but that assumption is based on the first test pit, and that after that test pit's conducted, BSC can re-review anything if necessary, if that's a concern. I don't think there's a groundwater issue on the slope. There's no weeping that I've seen on that whole slope this time that I've been there. And through this winter, I haven't seen anything that looks like water's coming out of the slope itself. I think the general building up of the whole roadway has created probably a natural drainage pattern that drops the groundwater underneath the roadway significantly to where it's down to where the wetlands are.
okay, well, why don't we proceed along those lines then? So, Ian, where do we stand with, Frank we're okay with the contract and we're,
Yes, I think that we had submitted everything to Frank once we got it from Mark. And we're sitting tight on the scope, I believe. Frank had some investigations to do on his end, clarifying issues with the DPW and the zoning board to make sure that we're covering their interests as well. So it's in his hands at this time.
okay. So we do have a hearing scheduled for 7:30, but the applicant has requested a continuation. So we've allowed this hearing to run a little over, but I think looking ahead to a continuation date, I think probably April 27th will give Frank an opportunity to get his administrative stuff tidied up and commence his review, and with any kind of luck, allow Fafford to and Goddard to peruse that and come up with their own comments and suggestions. So is that okay with you, Mark?
That sounds like a good.
And Frank?
Frank, is that okay with you?
That's fine. Yes.
All right,
If I have one really quick question
sure.
on the, so I believe you said from the toe of the slope to the road, it was 25 feet approximately. Does that sound about right? On the bottom of the armored slope to the road?
To the 25, so from the bottom of the armored slope to the road, yeah, it's around 25 feet total.
Yeah, but my biggest concern in this whole thing is the lowering of the excavator in there. I mean, is that arm on the large excavator going to be able to extend from the road 25 feet out so that it's, when that goes down, it's not going to hit the wall?
The machine isn't necessarily being on the road. He's probably going to be parked a little bit on the shoulder. So I mean, the large.
That's kind of a concern, though, if we're talking about the stability of the slope in the first place, and that's why we're doing all this.
They had heavy equipment building the slope from the top when they built it. I mean, it wasn't a small machine that put these in place. They had a large machine sitting pretty close to the top to be able to build the wall itself. And the machine's got a 30. The large machines there have about a 30-foot reach. So I mean, there is a way, because it's a small machine, we can actually get around the base of the wall in lot 81 and get around from that side. So if you want us to eliminate lifting it, we can get, because it's a mini excavator, so we're talking 6 feet, 7 feet wide around. We can actually get around, because we have to do the restoration along the face of the wall in lot 81. We can drive around the 81's house down the slope and do this work and then work our way out. We're going to be back behind 81 doing the rain gardens this spring anyway.
That's true.
So it's very possible for us to drive a machine down there. And I think that was kind of, in our notes, we have it as kind of, we left it as 2 options because we said, well, if we can just drive around, it might be just logistically easier to do that. And we're driving through an area that's already been disturbed, and then we're going to work our way out of that area anyway.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise we'd probably have to look at, to address Brian's concern, steel sheeting on the top to distribute the load, something like that. But the drive around addresses that issue. So if it's possible, conditions allow, I think that might be the way we want to go.
And again, I think if we're going to do this test bit early on, BSC is going to have to be there when that machine's put in place. So that's another thing that the peer review will be there to kind of make sure that things are done right to start there at least. So that's another safeguard.
Okay. You'll coordinate that.
So we look forward to seeing you on April 27th and seeing Frank's review letter in a few weeks.
Okay, yeah, so if there are no further questions, I think we've made progress. Thanks for the update. I'll entertain a motion to continue this hearing to the evening of 4/27 at 7 o'clock.
So moved.
Marianne,
Second.
Brian. I will do a roll call vote. So Michael Heron. I saw him raise his hand. Okay, so that's an aye. Brian.
Aye.
Noel.
Aye.
And Ariane.
Aye.
Okay, that's a unanimous vote.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you very much. Bellingham Conservation Commission will hold public hearings in accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Bellingham Wetlands Protection Bylaw, on the notice of intent for the proposed construction of a 124,200 square foot industrial building with associated parking, access, landscaping, utilities, and stormwater management system located at Assessors Map 52, Lot 3, 206 Mechanic Street, Bellingham. John Kuchik, South Bowler Engineering, Southborough, Mass. Has submitted the filing on behalf of Wayne Finnegan, Howland Development, Wilmington, Mass. The continuations will be held online via the Zoom option on Wednesday, March 23rd at 7:30. It's a little later than that. However, at the applicant's request, we are prepared to continue the hearing. So I will entertain a motion to continue the hearing to the evening of April 13th at 7:30.
So moved.
Noel,
Second.
okay, Brian, we'll do a roll call vote. Ariane,
Aye.
Noel,
Aye.
Brian,
Aye.
and Michael. Okay. All right, that's a unanimous vote. Okay. So we have a few found minutes, and if the applicant agrees, we can open up the first hearing for Prospect Hill Estates 10 minutes early. Is that acceptable to?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Lou Petrosi for Wall Street Development. Sure, we can go a little earlier if that's what the commission would like.
Sure. I mean, if anyone shows up during the process and requests an update, we will give them a quick update.
Sure.
Okay. Bellingham Conservation Commission will hold public hearings in accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bellingham Wetlands Protection Bylaw on the notice of intent for the proposed 19-lot residential subdivision entitled Prospect Hill Estates, located at Assessors Map 69, Parcel 87, and Map 65, Parcels 20 and 22, off Lake Street, Bellingham, and Prospect Street, Franklin. The projects include 19 residential lots, roadway, utilities, grading, and stormwater management system. The project proposes impacts of 35 linear feet to bank, 80 square feet of lane under water bodies, 490 square feet of bordering lane subject to flooding, 580 square feet of bordering vegetated wetlands, with 1,200 square feet of replication and total impacts to the riparian area of 126,674 square feet. That includes 52,049 square feet of inner riparian area and 74,625 square feet of outer riparian area. Paul McManus, Ecotech Incorporated, Worcester, Mass, has submitted the filing on behalf of Louis Petrozzi, Wall Street Development, Westwood, Mass. The hearing will be held online via the Zoom option on Wednesday, March 23rd at 7:45. Okay. So our peer reviewer is here. Our peer reviewer is here. Obviously, we're still waiting to coordinate the whole process, but we asked them to attend to just kind of get a feel, as this is the initial presentation, so we feel that it would be appropriate for you to make your presentation. We have some observations that we would like you to get started on prior to the BSC review. So I don't know if it's going to be Rob, we haven't, it's been a long time since we've had Rob with us. So, or if it's,
You want me to go through the plan?
is it going to be
first, Lou, and then I
Paul?
can have-
Certainly, go right ahead.
So I'll just go through the plan overall, and then I'll let Paul McManus go through the resource areas and the impacts to those.
Fair enough.
So I'll do a quick, can I share my screen, Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Okay, so for the record, I'm Rob Truax of GLM Engineering Consultants. And this is a definitive subdivision application that's before the planning board, as well as we filed a notice of intent with the Conservation Commission. So the total site, as you can see on my screen, is highlighted in dark green around the perimeter, light green in the developable areas. It's about a 77-acre site in total. The proposal is to develop it with a cul-de-sac roadway that's coming in off of Prospect Street. That roadway would be approximately 1,650 feet in length. There's 12 proposed single-family residential lots located along that cul-de-sac. And then there's 7 individual lots that front on either Prospect Street or Lake Street. So we have some frontage lots as well as lots within the project. Right now, we're just really kind of going through the full development of the roadway and what that entails. So I'm just going to kind of zoom in a little on that section. So we have a roadway network that comes in, slopes up slightly as you come in from Prospect Street, and then it goes down into the site through the resource areas, which there's a existing cart path that crosses through the wetland area with a 24-inch culvert, and then out into the back area. As you can see, we show the existing tree lines throughout the site. Some of the sites open. It's an old gravel removal operation that took place out there some years ago. So there's some bare soils, just sand exposed on the surface, and some areas that have grown back in with some brush and trees. The site will be serviced by on-site wells for the individual homes. It will also be serviced by on-site septic systems for the individual homes. The drainage system We're showing catch basins, manholes, culverts, and we're showing open recharge basins. We have 3 proposed open recharge basins on the site, and we have 1 small underground recharge area that's out at the intersection of Prospect Street is the one that's under the ground. So we've pretty much spread the drainage out throughout the entire property, trying to just recharge at different areas. We've captured some of the water that's coming in from where it slopes from Prospect down in towards the wetland crossing. We've got a basin on that side towards Prospect Street, which is a recharge basin. Then when you go over the wetland crossing, there's another recharge basin that's located right along the edge of the BBW. Then you go further down the cul-de-sac, and we've pulled the cul-de-sac water down, and we've done another recharge basin. These basins, as you can look at them, they're pretty elongated, and we did that because they're very shallow. Even in the 100-year floods, there's only, and we're not proposing any outlets other than infiltration. We just have emergency overflow. There's no culvert, point source, discharge outlet from the basin to the wetlands. They're all recharge basins. The soils out there, from what we've seen on the site, we have not, I will say that we have not done the soil testing within the basins. We are going out there next week and do that. So just some information. But what we've seen on the testing that we did do on some of the other lots that weren't back where the basins were was all sands and gravels and very high permeability rates. So it's very conducive to provide groundwater recharge throughout the area. So we've kind of elongated the basins, just making them shallow, keeping them as shallow as possible. And, they flood maybe, I think one of them floods only about 1.5 feet during a 100-year storm. The other one might be 2.5 feet, and the third one might even be might get upwards of 3 feet during a 100-year storm. And they've all come with, we're putting in 4 bays at the beginning of every basin, the 4 bay size to handle the water quality, which is 1 inch of runoff over the paved surface. So we've increased the size of those. And again, we are recharging up to and including the 100-year storm event. We did do it based on the Cornell curves, as spelled out in your bylaws. And then we kind of give a general idea of, where the house locations would be. They are conceptual at this point. We've not done final designs with septic systems. That would be later on in the process. But we just do it as to give us a general idea so we can, size the recharge and the drainage system properly. So we have not shown any proposed houses or development of the lots that are fronting along either Lake Street or Prospect. Every one of those lots has either wetland resource areas on them, either BBW, riverfront, floodplain, etc. So any of the individual homes that would be developed within those areas, high likelihood they would have to file a notice of intent just to do the home construction. Most of the work some of the work would at least be within buffer zones, etc. So we would deal with them on an individual basis as the filings go forward for those. The same with, there's a large lot down on Prospect Street. This one in the middle right here, or it's dark green along Prospect, that's all wetlands. That's really not some area that there'd be a house built up along Prospect Street. I believe there's actually a vernal pool on the upper side of the railroad bed. This is the old railroad bed that travels through the site. If you're familiar with the site, if anyone's been out there is an old railroad bed that went through there. And this area here is kind of blocked off from the main wetland with that railroad bed. There's no culverts or anything that go under it. And I believe Paul can speak again on this, but I believe there's a vernal pool that's within that wetland area along Prospect Street, which we're not doing any work within that buffer zone anyway, but I just wanted to highlight that that's not something we would be proposing a house. However, the lot down on the end, which is lot 12, which is very sizable, there is access to get up in there along the property boundary. That's an upland area. It's actually fenced off, and it was access that goes into some of the town of Bellingham land. And so there is access into that high upland area there. So there would be activity there in the future. And then there is some remaining land that goes out to the back, goes all the way up to Lakeview Ave. As you can see, there's an existing house on parcel A. There's no proposal at this time to do any work back there. The existing house will remain at this point in time. It's on a separate parcel back there. But it is all part of the overall property that's involved with the project. So we just want to point that out. So I think that's an overview. I think I'll let Paul go through the resource areas and the impacts to those and what's going on. If there's any specific questions you have right now in the subdivision, we can answer them, or we can just hold them all till Paul does his presentation.
Well, there are a couple of questions I'd like to talk about, Rob. If you could enlarge that, and let's look at lot 13.
13. Okay, where's 13? Yep.
Could you enlarge it just a little more?
Sure. You keep going.
All right. Okay, so lot 13. So 12 lots on the end of a cul-de-sac. So yeah.
This is lot 12 over here.
Well, I'm looking at lot 13.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Well, if you count the unit, are there 12 units there?
There's 12.
12 houses.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
So,
went from 1 to 11, and I put 12 out on the street and came back to 13. That's why they don't look quite like that.
okay. But the reason I want to question that lot is that I noticed that you put in many of your lots the amount of upland.
Yep.
Okay, and I imagine that's to conform to section 240-32 lot definition.
That's correct.
Okay. So lot 13 does not meet that criteria. And in fact, some of these lots are going to need to be recalculated. And I'm going to read you that section. Of the lot.
Sorry. Let me just go to the plan that shows the upland. I thought we had the upland calculations on here.
Yeah, you do.
Oh, okay.
You,
I didn't
you
have
do.
it on that one.
I think you do, but
You think it's incorrect?
yeah, I think what happens is it's not a question of upland. Okay, the way the lot definition is stated, it's not wetland versus upland. It says 90% of the lot area necessary for compliance with a minimum lot area requirement shall also be exclusive of areas subject to protection under the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, for reasons other than being subject to flooding. You have to include the riparian zone. That is subject to jurisdiction under the Mass Wetland Protection Act. So that makes lot 13, it doesn't have sufficient lot area.
You're saying the 200-foot out to the 200-foot repairing is resource area and doesn't count as upland?
That is exactly right. That is correct. And we've
never heard that be defined that way before.
You've never dealt with this lot definition in Bellingham before. What happened was when those regulations were promulgated, and we've had numerous developers who've questioned that, town council's opinion, which we concur with, is that at the time that was promulgated, the town never changed the lot definition to exclude the riparian zone like they did for the floodplain. So the 200-foot riparian zone is definitely an area subject to protection under the Wetlands Protection Act, and that area can't be included as, quote, uplands.
Okay, well, we'll have to look into that, absolutely.
Absolutely, and I mean, these are some of the things that we're giving you now before.
Yeah, that impacts all the lots, well, a good amount of them.
It will, and it'll also impact the lots along Lake Street.
Sure. No, it impacts everything.
And so this is something, that's why we're mentioning it now. And while we're still looking at plans, what we need is, we're going to need plans in 40 scale. And we're also going to need all of the buffer zones to be included. We need the 25-foot no disturb zone. we need the 50-foot limited activity zone. Now you've got the buffer zones. They're really hard to pick up. If
There's
it
a lot
would
of
be,
lines,
you know, it's a busy plan.
it's a busy plan.
It's a busy plan.
There's a lot of buffers.
There are a lot of buffers in including the 25 and the 50. There'll be more buffers. You know, the inner riparian and the outer riparian zones are definitely there. But if there's a way to put it on a 40 scale and maybe run colored lines for different buffer zones, so it'll be easier to see.
We
Is
can
that,
do that.
oh,
Yeah.
that's perfect.
Yeah, I think I have the 25 and the 100. I don't have the 50 on there from the wetland.
Okay. Then we want to make sure that, Rob, you used field shot grades, right? You didn't use a flyover and assume grades, right?
No, we topo this on the ground.
Okay, so you found the benchmark and you extrapolated and it's all field shot grades.
Yeah, we use, we're on NAVD 88.
Okay. Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
we did, this is an on the ground topographic survey. We didn't do it, it wasn't flown.
Okay, good.
That's good.
Thank you.
No.
I know how those can go.
And so one of the reasons Lake Street, and maybe we should hold off on that with Paul, because I'm looking at some of the things here. Oh, one of the things we need to do, Rob, is to address the local bylaw. We have to make sure that, and apparently according to soil conditions that you've observed in the field, there's going to be no problem with no outfall from the 25-year storm because you're containing up to the 100-year storm. Frank will be looking at that. But we're going to ask you to model it in accordance with our regs for 25-year storm, assuming frozen ground conditions. Shouldn't be a problem, but that's one of the things we'll be asking. And another thing that we'll have to investigate carefully is those basins have to be located 50 feet from waters of the Commonwealth. And, you know, it was hard to say, to measure them off. Looked like they're about 35 feet. So you may have to make some adjustments there. I'm sorry?
Say that again, I'm sorry. You were saying.
Okay. The basins have to be located 50 feet from waters of the Commonwealth. And they don't appear to be 50 feet from waters. So that's something, I mean, I'm getting to this to give you a heads up before Frank gets at it. So maybe you can get some of this done before he talks about it. And you need 4 feet of separation to groundwater.
Correct.
Okay, good. So I think that's it for the engineering. And you modeled using the Cornell.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
I used your curves.
Okay. All right. All right, Rob, now we can move on to Paul.
Paul, you want me to put up any of these sheets?
If the colored one,
The color one for now?
the colored one is probably the easiest to see.
I
Rob.
have the one that shows just the, you know, just the resource areas on the definitive. I don't have it colored though.
Yeah, I think for this kind of high level view, I think the colored one is
Okay.
helpful.
And this is the first cut too, so.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Paul McManus from Ecotech. My firm delineated the resource areas out there. Basically, what we have, before I forget, I should note Rob was correct about where that vernal pool is. It's basically a triangular area that was cut off, appears to have been cut off long time ago when the railroad grade went in. So it's an isolated wetland on the lower side of the plan, which I think is east, but it's on the street side of the railroad, as where Rob pointed it out. So he's correct there.
Oh, is that in Franklin?
That looks like it.
Looks like it might be in Franklin.
Yeah, it actually is.
Or is it 50-50?
I think it actually straddles the town line.
Oh,
Okay, we'll check that out when we when we do our site evaluation.
Sure.
Mm.
So in addition to that, as you can see, as Rob pointed out, the light green is vegetated wetlands. Most of that is actually neglected to lighten up where that pool is. But most of it is bordering vegetated wetlands, borders a stream that flows on this figure from right to left. You talked about the riparian area. You'll notice that the area of the proposed crossing and then upstream, which is to the right, has a riverfront area attached to it. But then that arcs around the top. The reason for that is because there's a break on the USGS map in terms of the designation from perennial mapping, which is a presumed river, to intermittent mapping. For the intermittent portion, you'll see in our delineation report, we ran stream stats, and the intermittent portion comes up as in fact intermittent. So that's why a portion of the property, portion of the stream has riverfront associated with it, although the stream itself traverses the entire property. So as Rob said, the road is proposed at the location of an existing crossing. There's I forget, maybe a 16 or so inch culvert, if memory serves, at that location. There's some fill. It's where there's a gravel road, I assume from the mining operation that went on. But there's a competent road and competent culvert there at that location. The proposal is to widen that. The existing fill at that location is not wide enough to accommodate subdivision road. So there is some additional fill of bordering vegetated wetland on either side. In addition to that, it's proposed to replace that existing small culvert with a large box culvert that meets the stream crossing standards. So it's not shown on this kind of overall plan, but there's BVW replication proposed along the edge of the existing wetland, and so that's proposed at just over, slightly over 2-to-1 for the footprint of BVW alteration. With respect to the riverfront area, within that area, I went out myself and delineated areas of degraded riverfront, and there's kind of what I designated as, I actually delineated in the field as 2 different zones of that area. So as you know, the property was really beat up during the mining operations. To the rear of the proposed crossing, there's an area that's really open, bare sand, and I think quite straightforward, that lacks topsoil. There's no vegetation, there's no topsoil. Again, it's just bare sand from what appears to be relatively recent mining operation. And then around the fringes of that, I actually delineated a second area that really took a little bit more work. The first area was, I think, very straightforward, that it lacks topsoil and qualifies as degraded riverfront. In addition to that, I delineated another area that does have some vegetation in it, primarily just seedling and seedling white pines for the most part, and an area that, although there is some vegetation on it, in my view, it didn't have what would be considered topsoil. And then there's other areas that are clearly have a history of mining. It's clearly not a natural soil profile, but where those areas have been abandoned long enough that I felt that, although it was pretty minimal, that those areas did have some topsoil development. So those areas, even though the topsoil is very minimal, clearly not a natural profile, I did not delineate those as degraded riverfront. So they're kind of, they clearly have some history. But I felt that they'd been essentially been abandoned long enough, and Mother Nature had done some recovery and developed a little bit of topsoil in there. So, and then of course there's some areas that where there's actually a natural 6-inch layer of obvious topsoil that's obviously not degraded on the site. So be much easier to talk about and explain what I did on the site, which I'm sure we'll do.
Absolutely.
So the other resource that's out there that there is a FEMA floodplain map through here. Rob has addressed that. It's basically it's basically confined to the wetland. There's fairly steep slopes through there. One other thing that in terms of riverfront area, there's some very large piles out. Rob, I think you were just on it with your cursor. Very large piles of soil that have been placed out there, I'm sure as remnants from the mining. Interestingly enough, there appear to be largely topsoil, but they are areas where that material was dumped. Oh, there you go. Rob's got it on this sheet. So those areas are the two to the left are within the riverfront area. That one's partially, and that one with his cursor entirely within the riverfront area. So we again, something to look at and consider more easily well on the ground. So that's kind of the 10,000-foot view. And Rob does have on the plan, there is a 20 scale detail of the proposed crossing and the replication, which we can discuss now if you want to, or put off to another time. But that detail is there at 20 scale.
I think what we'll do is we'll defer that for the moment. Because what we'll do is when we go out there, well, I've got a list of things we're going to ask you to prepare for our inspection, and investigation of the proposed replication areas is one of them. So, okay, let me see what I have there. We talked to Rob. I have a couple more notes. Okay. We're probably going to need a wildlife habitat evaluation for impacts to the riparian zone, but we'll know better when we go out, Paul. And we can make that call in the field. I did want to talk about the lots off of Lake Street. I know Rob's going to recalculate, and it appears that there will be sufficient lot area there to build, but we want to caution you to investigate very carefully the development of those lots, because you don't want to have a limited project crossing with a lot of wetland impact when you control the whole parcel. You can't create your own hardship and then come back to us and say, gee, we want a limited project. So we're going to caution you about that with the new information about the lot area size and et cetera, et cetera. So, and I think that's about all. Well, that's all I had. Are there any other questions from the commission? I'm not going to ask Frank unless he's champing at the bit to make a comment, because we're still waiting to set that all up. What we're looking at is we'll be waiting for Frank to conduct his review. We've given you folks something to consider. And we're going to need to go out and in preparation for our, let me back up just a little. Paul, you're familiar with the site. They're going to be going out on the 31st, I believe.
No, April 4th.
Oh, April 4th. Okay. April 4th to do a soil evaluation.
April 5th.
April
April
5th.
5th. Okay. So in your opinion, Paul, there'll be no problem going out there with a small piece of equipment, no potential damage to resource areas. The Hall Road will easily accommodate the equipment.
I'm confident they can
Okay.
get down there without a problem.
Okay, then on your word, that's not a problem. So for the site inspection, first of all, the basic thing we need to do is we want to make sure that all of the wetland flags are still up. Sometimes when we go out in the spring, you know, flags have been knocked down. Sometimes abutters who are upset remove them. We want to make sure the flags are still up. And then in the field, we talked about on the plans having the 25-foot no disturb and the 50-foot limited activity. We don't need them. We don't need them marked consistent with the wetland flags, but we need them frequently enough so that we can determine those areas in the field, along with the riparian zone, the 50 and the 100. And you did a substantial evaluation of the characteristics of the degraded areas. Did you have any flagging up there, or was it all picked up by survey?
No, there are, if you look at the plans, you'll see, I don't remember the designations, but there's clear flagging that then Rob's crew went and picked up those individual flags.
Okay, perfect.
So you can see where he's got there, you can see this kind of irregular, there's a jagged line that would remind you of a BVW line.
It does. Okay.
So that's the flagging. So that's numbered flagging that you can compare to the plan.
Okay, perfect. The stormwater management structures, I'm going to try to get out there when you're doing your soil evaluation, but if we could have those marked out so that we know where they are. And we do have to have that 50-foot setback. That's a state requirement. And along with that, the wetland replication area, I think we talked about that earlier in the meeting, and the crossing impacts in their entirety. So what we're trying to do is minimize the amount of trips that we have to make out there. So if we can go out there and wrap all of this up in one visit, or most of it, it's a fairly extensive site. But, you know, we have enough experience to be able to knock this kind of thing out.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question? Lou, this is Lou Petrozzi.
Sure.
So I just want to get a better understanding of how the peer review process is going to work. My understanding is that the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission will try to use the same peer reviewer.
Yes.
And will the commission and the planning board have a proposal, or how would you start the peer review? Would you start it with a payment from Wall Street, or how does that work with the commission?
I'll defer to the administrator.
So if I can, so what we do, Lou, is we will send out, we will do a joint peer review, as I told Paul McManus. We will do a joint peer review with the planning board. We've sort of talked to BSC about this already. So what I'll do is I'll get the notice of intent and all the things that were submitted to the Conservation Commission out to our peer reviewer for him to create the scope, and planning board will do the same, so that they will have all of the information in front of them, and they develop the scope. Once the scope is developed, then it is signed and by you and the town, We send it back to the peer reviewer, and the town receives the check. We hold that in a peer review account, and then we start the process. I hope I was clear enough on that.
Yeah, and my question is, we don't have to come back to another meeting in order to agree on the peer review. In other words, we can just do that outside of the meeting process.
Yeah, yes, that's correct.
Okay,
Right, in other words, the minutes reflect that this is going to be the procedure, and then the administrative aspects will be handled between the administrator, the peer reviewer, and yourself.
correct.
In
That's fine.
the planning board.
So Jim
Right.
Pupfer actually reached out to me this morning and asked if we had sent out this for a scope. And I indicated to him that we were having our meeting tonight, and during the hearing, we would discuss it and get the process, get the ball moving.
Okay,
Okay,
That's
because you're
good.
going to the planning board tomorrow night.
correct, right. I just wanted to not sort of delay things because we have been waiting a little bit on getting this filed. So we just want to try and expedite with the commission during the weather that we have to get site meetings and site inspections completed without going through a large administrative process with the peer reviewer. That's all.
Mhm.
Okay, yep. Yeah, we've
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I just wanted to revisit our task list for a site walk. We will go out in my office and verify that all the flags are there.
Mhm.
And I think the rest of it is going to fall to Rob's shop. And I had on my list, we want to flag the stormwater basins, the replication areas,
Mhm.
the crossing.
Yeah.
And then I was a little unclear as to what buffer zones you wanted.
Okay, and it doesn't have to be perpendicular to every single wetland flag, but the 25-foot no disturb zone. We'd like an occasional stake along the 25-foot no disturb zone and the 50-foot limited disturbance zone.
Along the whole wetland or just in the area of that's the impact areas?
Well,
I mean, it's a pretty long
in other words,
wetland.
we don't have to, the areas to the north where there's no activity proposed,
Yep,
if, and I think Rob alluded to the fact that on lot 12 in the future, there's going to be some sort of development there.
Yep.
We won't need to propose, we won't need to have those buffer zones there. If you're going to ask us to review all that whole wetland system, we won't need the 25-foot or the 50-foot limited disturbance zone in those areas. But anything to the south of
the basins.
from the basins to the south, that will all need to be staked out in the 25 and the 50, and
Yeah, just,
and plus the riverfront, yeah. But I think Paul said he already had that.
okay,
And we'll have a set of plans with us, and with flagging up, that'll make it a heck of a lot easier.
Do you want the 100 and 200 foot riparians flagged? Is that what you're saying?
I think Paul's already done that.
No.
Well, I was there's a little confusion. There's I know out in the back in the gravel pit, when I did the flagging, the 200 had already been staked and marked. And then what I was referring to is I had for the degraded areas, I had placed individual flags that Rob's crew then surveyed and plotted on the plan. I don't recall, Rob, that you had the 100. I think you had the 200 basically, so that I knew where, how far I had to evaluate, basically.
Did we do that on both sides, Paul?
yeah, we did the 200 on both sides.
Yes, you did.
Okay.
You had the 200 on both sides of the crossing.
So we have the 200 already staked. I mean, we can do the 100. It's just.
Yeah, because that's the inner,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have, like I said, as long as it's line of sight, we'll be okay. It doesn't have to be every, like a wetland flag when you're down in the dense.
It's just gonna be a lot of overlapping stakes out there, and it might get confusing.
If we use different colors, maybe we can figure it out. I did have one more question for Paul. We talked about the area. Can you point out the area where we go from intermittent to perennial? Okay, that's it. Okay, that's what I thought.
Actually, it's 100 feet downstream. It's right there. There it is. Because if you look where Rob has his cursor, that's the point from which the arcs emanate. Right where his cursor is.
Got it. I see it now. Yep. Okay. So I think waiting for the proper time, waiting for the preparation to be done. I'm looking for my agenda.
So I think that what would really be helpful, Lou, when we get, when I send this stuff out to Frank, it would be very helpful if we could, move along on these 40 scale plans that we've been talking about. I think it might make it easier for our peer reviewer to be able to visualize what we have up on the site.
Can I ask a question on the 40 scale? You don't need the entire site, 40 scale. You just really need where the wetlands are and the impact areas.
We need 40 scale plans, Lou. We need 40 scale plans because there are buffer zones and wetlands throughout the site, and it's part of our plan requirements and our regs, and even with 40 scale, we can manage. I was working with the 60 scales a few days ago, and it's a challenge. So that's why we require the 40s. So here's the strategy I'm going to suggest. I'd like to continue this to April 27th. And that'll give our peer reviewer an opportunity to review the materials, but it'll also give us ample time to get out there, and it'll give Rob and Paul ample time to assure that the stuff in the field is prepared.
That's fine with us, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay.
That being the case, I want to thank you for the opportunity to present this to us and provide the information and give us the opportunity to provide preliminary comments. So this is good.
Sure. May I ask one question, Mr. Chairman? Because I know you've mentioned this definition of lot area or a lot in your bylaw. Do you have a legal opinion from town council relative to what qualifies as a resource area under the Wetlands Protection Act?
Well, it's pretty easy. Resource area, the riverfront area is a resource area.
Well, I just want to double check it so I can sleep at night.
Well, we've had multiple opinions from town council because we've had multiple applicants who were unsure about whether or not the riverfront resource area was jurisdictional to the Conservation Commission. And in lot definition, it clearly is jurisdictional. So
I understand. I'm just looking for whatever information you have, background information, so that I could do my due diligence.
okay.
So if you have
one other
anything-
question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Site, do you want to try to schedule a site visit tonight, or we do that offline? Or
I think what we'll do, we're going to be meeting again on the 13th. And I'm thinking probably between the 13th and the 27th, we'll be able to poll the commission, find out. I'd like to get as many members as possible out for this one.
sure.
If something comes up and you guys say, hey, we're ready to go, we can always send out a query. Can have the administrator query and see how many folks we can get out there.
Okay, and I'm happy to accommodate. I know sometimes commissions, people have busy schedules, and I've just last week I did 2 site walks on the same site just to be able to get the commission there. So we'll accommodate what you need.
It'll probably be a Saturday, Paul.
I'm sorry?
It'll probably be on a Saturday.
Understood.
Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion to continue the hearing for Prospect Street and Lake Street to the evening of April 27th at 7:30.
So moved.
Brian. Mike, we'll poll the members. Ariane. Noel,
Aye.
Brian,
Aye.
and Mike.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Great, thanks a
Thank you
lot.
all. Have a good night.
Take care now. Excuse me. The Bellingham Conservation Commission will hold public hearings in accordance with the Mass Works Protection Act, General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, on the proposed roadway drainage improvements, including abandonment of an existing culvert and installation of a new 15-inch RCP with 2 head walls with proposed impacts of approximately 50 square feet of BVW and associated buffer zone located in the roadway right-of-way on Mellon Street, Bellingham. Bill Housing, Land Planning, Hartford Avenue, Bellingham has submitted the filing on behalf of Don DiMartino, DPW Director, Blackstone Street, Bellingham. The hearings will be held, online via the Zoom option on Wednesday, March 23rd at 8:30. Okay.
Good evening.
Oh, there's Bill Housing.
Hi, Bill.
How you all doing?
Yeah, we're doing all right.
Mark Gates is here with me in case there's any technical stuff you guys want to talk about.
Okay.
And can I screen share to show the plan?
Absolutely.
I just have to remember how to do this. It's been a while. Most everyone is not remote these days. Yeah, how's that? Can you guys see it?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay, this is a section of Mellon Street that Dawn had called us about a while back. The road is pretty degraded and has a lot of puddles and whatever on it. There seems to be a bit of a berm that's built up over time just from road sand and stuff out there. We had wetlands delineated by Scott Heim Northeast Ecological Services. Located all that stuff. Did some digging for that existing culvert out there, which I'm not sure how functional it was at the time, but DPW dug it up for us. So what the plan is out here is to raise the existing road so we can leave most of the existing embankments on the side. And Don wants to fill the existing culvert. Originally, we're taking it out, but he wants to fill with flowable fill. We'll add a new culvert to let water pass under the street, bring it up and pitch the road and put a good crown on it so we don't have the puddling out there anymore. So we'll have sheet flow off to the existing wetlands, and we'll be adding erosion control blanket in any spots where it is necessary so we don't have erosion into the wetlands. Setting silt fence before construction begins. In a nutshell, that's it.
Does this road flood?
Yeah, we had puddles along the sides of it. The berms, what do you think, Mark? About 6-8 inches along the edges?
It's about 6 inches.
Yeah. And the road's pretty crumbly from all of that.
Well, what we're going to do, we're going to engage peer review on this.
Yeah.
I don't know if Ann told you that.
No, I told Dawn.
Oh, she told Don. Okay.
Yeah, I was copied on it, so I do know what's happening.
All right.
I'm glad you were copied.
Okay.
Every once in a while, you know.
And so this is another one we're gonna ask Frank to take a look at, but this is nowhere near as complicated as some of the issues we've been dealing with recently, Frank. What we're looking at here primarily is to make sure that the pipe is going to be properly sized and that we're not going to have a situation that evolves where we end up with downstream scour, erosion, or anything like that. I mean, you have a straight head wall there in riprap.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's a bit higher than the existing.
Yeah, well, we're gonna go out and take a look at it. And in fact, while we have the commission here, I'm wondering, is anyone available on Saturday to go out and take a look at this? Because I'd like to include this with the railway bridge repair, because it's right in the same neighborhood. Do a little walking. Is anybody available on Saturday?
Sure.
I heard a sure, but I don't know what
Is
said it.
that Mike?
Mike, okay.
I'm not.
Ariane can't make it.
I could be available.
Excellent.
Oh,
Or
that
should
would
be available.
be awesome. I don't know about Noel.
Can't this Saturday.
All right. Okay. So three of us and the administrator will go out. We'll look at the wetland line. The flags are still up, right?
They were last we checked. It was flagged last year.
Oh,
Hmm,
well,
Can you check?
can you check for us?
Yeah, we'll take a ride by and see what we got.
Perfect. Nothing's more frustrating than showing up for a delineation and finding out
Put a little.
the flags are gone. So we're gonna go out and take a look at the existing conditions. Now, the new pipe is going to be not a lot. It's going to be diagonally across the road. The existing pipe, as I'm looking at it, appears to be at maybe a 45-degree angle across the road.
Yeah,
So does one go over the other? How does that? work?
So, well, I think in the narrative,
So is the new pipe over the old pipe?
for a little bit there. So the old pipe would get broken out. And our pipe goes from low point to low point. The other one, the end of it's kind of buried. It's been took a
probably,
while to actually find it.
okay. Do you have it marked in the field where the invert and where the
For the
inverts
new
are?
pipe,
Yeah,
we do not, but let me see if we can do that for Saturday.
that'd be perfect. If not, we're not gonna go out. Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna ask Frank to take a look at that. You know, there's not enough water to put a culvert in there, right?
Well, we certainly don't want whatever's there to overtop the road ever.
Right.
But that existing pipe was really not functioning.
Hmm. No, because it wasn't maintained, or was it too low, or was it not at the right elevation?
Well, I think it was too low and it just kind of got vegetated in and whatever on the ends.
Low maintenance.
Plus some of the silt that created the 8-inch berms along the side of the road
Yeah.
washed down in there and helped block up the end of the pipe.
Oh, no doubt.
There's no head walls on that pipe. or anything.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't want to have the town go through the exercise of putting in a culvert. I have no idea what kind of flows. When were you out there? You had to have been out there. Did you see any kind of channelization?
Oh, Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, there is a bit on both sides. It does make it through the culvert now. But a lot of the problem is the culvert's eroded on each end. There was no head wall, no riprap. So it's just scouring.
And it's continuing to exacerbate the silting problem.
Right.
All right.
Hmm.
Okay. So here's what I'm going to suggest. We're keeping Frank very busy. I think I think Frank should retire from BSC and come work for Bellingham. Okay, I'm gonna suggest that we go out on Saturday, we take a look at it. If Frank has not had an opportunity to provide comment, at least we can come back to the public hearing and present information that we found in the field and make it a matter of public record. We'll have that part of it done. Okay, that being said, I'll entertain a motion to continue to conduct a site visit at 8:30 Saturday morning. We'll meet on site at Mellon Street, and to continue the hearing to the evening of April 13th at 8:30.
8 o'clock.
No, oh, I'm sorry, 8 o'clock. My mistake, 8 o'clock.
Then I don't move it.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
I'll remove it without removing it. I will remove it. And again.
And I think Brian seconded.
Well, second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Ariane,
Aye.
Noel,
Aye.
Brian,
Aye.
and Mike.
Aye.
Okay, by unanimous vote. Okay.
Thanks, Bill.
Bill, thank you. Will you be out there? Will anybody be out there?
Yeah, one of us will plan on being there.
Perfect.
And if everything blows up, I'll let you know on Friday.
Appreciate that.
Because it's going to rain tomorrow. I'm not sure if I can get the field crew out there Friday morning.
Okay.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
What happened?
Oh, thank you and good night.
Oh, okay. All right. Hey, that was easy.
Yeah. See you next time.
Okay. 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 We are a couple of minutes early. But we're going to proceed with opening up the continuation.
Well, perhaps maybe
Oh,
we could
okay.
do minutes.
All right,
Do
good
minutes.
idea.
Just to take up a little more time.
Sure.
Make sure everyone's there.
Minutes for February 23rd.
Yeah, I got something, but I'm still maxed. You get to hang on a second. I'm gonna reduce my screen here.
Hey, while you're looking that up, I know the new Amy is on board. I was a couple of minutes late on the recording, but there was not a whole lot of excitement going on. I just opened up the meeting. If you're uncomfortable with that, I can write something in when we do the minutes. Wasn't a whole lot we missed.
I got it, Cliff. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. On the minutes for the 9th.
We accepted those, didn't we?
No.
So we had the 23rd of February and the 9th of March.
Right,
That's
yeah, you're right.
Okay.
So is February 23rd okay?
I had, wait a second, I see which one I can call up first. My screen keeps freezing and unfreezing. Hang on. I've got them both.
Turn the heat up in there.
What's that?
Turn the heat up.
Yeah, really. It's only so easy. There we go. Okay, so I've got the minutes. Come on, open up Dropbox. All right, February 23rd, page 1, there's a couple of minor things, nothing huge. The second sorry, third page. First paragraph.
He's on the ninth. He's on the.
Wait a minute, you're on February
February
23rd,
23rd.
Okay.
page 3.
Right. Hold on a second. My screen is saying page 2, but I scrolled through 2 pages. Almost like I'm still catching up. Yeah, the come on, mouse.
Toe of slope.
Yes, toe of slope again in the first paragraph, and then the next paragraph, the fourth, fifth line, the viability of the boulder wall. I think it's BOULDER. Unless you're saying the wall was bolder than it was before, and more adventurous.
Oh, Boulder, okay.
Not a biggie. Hold on a second, scrolling down a little bit more. So that was actually, yes, page 3. Now I'm getting to page 4. It's looking good. 5. I think is Jenks JENCKS. For some reason that looked wrong. Reservoir.
Where are you?
Well, just before the adjournment, last page.
Oh, okay, hold on.
Jenks Reservoir. How do you spell Jenks?
JENKS,
That's right.
is it?
I think so.
JENCKS.
I never spell it that way.
It looked funny. I don't know. I could be right. I just thought to myself, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. If it's right, great. That was it for that one.
I never spelled it that way. Okay,
Hang on. Get the other one up here.
okay. So March 9.
Yeah, March 9th. Hang on a second. I'll get it here.
Mhm.
Okay. March 9th, page 2. First paragraph, about halfway through it, it says establishing positive flow will solve the issue of the 3/4 pipe of the pipe not being able to discharge. Just take one of the issues out, and then we won't have any issue with it. It's just a double the issue. No. See that? Establishing the positive flow will solve the issue.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Next paragraph, second line, the commission never received an asphalt drawing. I'm assuming it was as built, right?
As
as
built,
built.
that is correct.
But there could be an asphalt drawing if it, paves the way to approving the project, whatever. Then further down, Mr. DePietro suggested focusing on the invert elevation at 24-66. That's probably .66, right? Because the next number is a straight line to 24.63. Just a dots, dashes, whatever. So I think it should be a 248.66 instead of 248-66.
Yep.
Okay. Yep.
And then a little further down, the commission is satisfied the strategy is going to work. They just need vehicle to proceed and complete the project. I'm not sure what vehicle to proceed was.
So it's proceed, but it's just misspelled.
But need vehicle to proceed? You're not talking about an actual vehicle, right?
You're going to satisfy the just needed.
Well,
I don't know what, maybe we do. Is a vehicle like a way
The
of
means?
proceeding?
it means like, yeah, the means or
Yeah.
the system or,
Okay.
in order to complete the project, we need the vehicle to proceed.
Okay, all right.
They have to provide us with that information.
That way before, the way you said it, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, great, thanks. And then closing on the 13th, yeah, that's fine. I think that, 1 second, scroll down. What else? I got a new computer too. It's just like, okay, here we go. Way at the bottom. I think. Yeah, that was it. Sorry. So I just scrolled up through that. So that was all I have for either minutes. Thank you.
Pretty darn good if you ask me.
A lot of work here.
Yeah, I appreciate it every time I read through them because I know how much of a pain it is to type them all up.
Oh, yeah.
And not only that, but this brings us right up to date.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
We're ahead of most boards and committees in town. All right, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes for February 23rd and March 9th as amended.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we'll dispense with the roll call. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's a unanimous vote.
Excellent. Okay.
All right. So for those of us who are going out on Saturday, the plan is we will review the drainage improvements. We'll drive down to where the bridge is out. We're going to walk across the bridge into Hopedale, and then we're going to walk a quarter mile down the railroad tracks to the bridge replacement. And we'll scope that out because the work is supposed to commence on Monday.
Yeah.
And we'll see if any prep work is taking place. So we'll have fun. Okay.
Are you having Uber pick us back up to take us back to our
No.
cars on Collins Street?
Do you know when the last time Conrail was doing their vegetated management plan? And they said, well, what do you want to, so, here's the map. And we said, no. We're going to walk from Hopedale. We're going to walk the railroad line. They're like, that's 4.5 miles. We're like, yeah, we're going to walk from here to Franklin. They're like, well, all right, well, we're going to ride in one of those trucks with them. They dropped the wheels and we walked and they followed us all the way down. We identified 2 areas, one around a public well that they didn't even know about. Okay, so moving on. The Bellingham Conservation Commission will hold continuations of public hearings in accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bellingham Wetlands Protection Bylaw on the abbreviated Notice of Resource Area Delineation for the confirmation of 944 linear feet of delineated bordering vegetated wetlands located at Assessor's Map 20, Lot 12, 79 Maple Street, Bellingham. Ryan Rosen, Goddard Consulting, Northborough, Mass. Has submitted the filing on behalf of Anne Marie Hill, 79 Maple Street, Bellingham. The continuations will be held online via the Zoom option on Wednesday, March 23rd at 9. I see Ryan is here.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello. Okay. I think there are a couple of interested parties here, abutters. So for the record, members of the Conservation Commission, the chairman, the administrator, vice chair, Mike O'Haron and Brian Norton were present for a site walk last Saturday morning. And we found we had some disagreement about the location of the line. So by mutual agreement with the proponent and Goddard Engineering, we're going to engage the services of an independent reviewer to take a look at that wetland line. And I think
You're in the process.
we're in the process of doing that now. We would love to have some kind of information by the week's end or early part of next week. The plan is to have them go out, take a peek at it, come back with their findings, and then if necessary, we can have Nicole and the commission and this independent person go out and we'll work it out. Is that what you understood, Ryan?
Yes, that is exactly right.
Okay, well, that's what we have. So does anyone from the public have a question about the process and what we're doing here?
So, hi, 59 Maple Street. So there's just a dispute on where the property line is, and
No.
it will be.
Okay, it's not the property line. I mean, they surveyed that in the field. The property line is accurate. We had a difference of opinion about where the wetland line is going to be.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, we felt that the wetland line was too conservative. We thought that the wetland line should be expanded a little bit. And so sometimes, as happens in these kinds of cases, we call in a third party. They present their findings, then we all go back out and look at it again. And we try to come up with something that is scientifically correct.
Okay, sounds
So rest assured, it's not a slam dunk.
good. Got it.
We knew this was going to be a toughie, and
Yeah.
and so far it has been. So, but we're working on it.
Okay, awesome. And now that that wetlands information will become public, correct?
Absolutely.
That expanded wetlands.
If we come to an agreement and the wetland line is changed, there will be a new plan of record, and it will show that. It will reflect that change.
And that will
Okay.
be a public.
And that will be public record.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Ryan, so what we're hoping is to be able to continue this to our next meeting. Okay, we get an extra week off. We get a week off from conservation. Once a quarter, we get that. So it's going to be 3 weeks instead of 2 weeks. So Ian will be in touch with your office and keep you guys apprised of how we're making out. And so I'll entertain a motion to continue the hearing to the evening of April 13th at 8:30.
So moved.
Michael,
Second.
Noel, I'll dispense with the roll call. All in favor?
Aye.
I heard them all. It's a unanimous vote. Okay,
Here, thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you. I think that's it.
I think that's it.
Nothing to sign this week. But
So Saturday,
this Saturday.
we'll see you out there. Frank's got some homework to do all over the place
Oh, my
for us.
goodness, yes.
Oh, fortunately, I cleaned up a few things, so I have some free time in the next day. And I had a bunch of family here from California. There's only one left, so I now have more time to get back to work.
They're going back to the fires,
They're going back, yes. So
Oh, my.
southern or northern?
they're Southern California, San Diego, Carlsbad. So
Oh, that's a nice place.
Frank, it's good to know everything's okay with you.
thank you. Yes. So the story today is about the origin of okay. And if you think the words that we're using today, counterculture and all that stuff are, sort of modern, it actually goes back to, this is 1839 on this date. The Boston Morning Post, had an article that picked up some of the slang of the day because things don't change. Young people those times were using abbreviations. And so there were a couple different ones, but OK was ORL, all correct, KORRECT. And that was their abbreviation. They had other ones which sort of make sense. There was DZ for these. And they had one about quill, KEWL for cool. So on and stuff like that. But it didn't just end there. In the 1840 election, Martin Van Buren was running for re-election. And apparently, because he was a little bit older gentleman, and he was from Kinderhook, New York, he was okay. So there was old Kinderhook, and that's because Marty Van Buren was okay or cool. However, his opponents, the Whigs, got into it, and Martin Van Buren's sort of mentor was Andrew Jackson, who was notoriously bad speller, and he couldn't spell all correct. He spelled it OWLKORRECT. So they sort of made a point that Martin Van Buren's mentor couldn't spell and was not all correct, and went back and forth. By the mid 1850s or so, OK was a part of the vernacular. And its real big turning point was in 1864 when it made it into the dictionary of vulgar words. I'm not sure okay is a vulgar word, but back in those days. So just want to let you know, everything's okay.
But those kids today, it's the way it's been, right? It's a good thing Mike O'Haron wasn't around.
All I can say is the kids back then, those tablets in the 1800s, they were made out of slate. They weren't like.
No, they were made out of asphalt.
There you go. Bitumen, I believe it was. They didn't have asphalt quite yet.
No.
That's a story for another time.
There you go. So,
All right, see y'all.
Thank you, Frank.
you're welcome.
Thanks.
Ladies, gentlemen, thank you very much. Motion to adjourn.
Thanks. So moved.
Favor?
Aye.
All right,
Thank you,
good
folks.
night.
Good couple weeks.
Good
Night.
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 Take care.
Bye.